Oh, yeah.
Do you feel natural? Isn't this so natural? Are you rolling? Did you get that? Did you get us being natural? Almost 10 years ago now, you survived the miracle on the Hudson. Tell me about that experience.
If you watch the footage of the plane crash, when it was coming down, it hit at the back. So the tail of the plane took the brunt of the impact.
Yep.
And if you were close to the window, you could see that we almost hit the George Washington Bridge. And you could see that we were going into the water. I sat in 5D, which was not in first class. It was an aisle, but it was close to the front. So the fire on the engines was behind me. I wasn't near the windows, so I didn't see the George Washington Bridge. And so initially, when we took off, about 5 minutes, I guess, into takeoff, was when you heard this really loud bang. And I thought, oh, that's not so great. But I knew these things happen. They were mechanical issues. We've all been on planes where we've had to turn around because of mechanical issues. So at first, I really wasn't frightened. I also remembered sitting in front of an off-duty pilot. So I turned my head and I said to him, we're going to make an emergency landing back in LaGuardia, right? And he said, yeah. He was really calm.
But calm.
Cool. Yeah. He was very calm, cool, collected.
Yep.
So I followed his lead and I went back to reading the newspaper.
That's I think my favorite part of your whole story. You're like, I just calmly read the newspaper as we started to go down.
Exactly. So then the next thing I remember, the Captain Sully, gets on and he says, brace for impact. So I'm like, okay, brace for impact. And then the flight attendants in first class who were instructing us in the back, they said, brace, head down, stay down. So you get in that tough position and you wait. So we ultimately land, we glide a long way, we come to a stop. And after I, do one of these to make sure I'm all in one piece, the next instructions we get are seat cushions and life jackets, leave everything else behind, hurry. I didn't realize we were in water until they gave us those instructions. And I exited by going in a little raft. And I was sitting on the water. And while I was there, I picked out my phone and I called my husband. And my husband answered the phone. He's like, hi, honey, how's it going? And I calmly said, I've been in a plane crash, but I'm okay. And he said, and I quote, ha, 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 you're shitting me.
Right.
Excuse my language.
It's okay. I would say the same. I think that calls for a little cursing. It's okay.
And then I said, no, I'm not kidding. And he was like, what? And I said, I got to go. Because now you have frogmen jumping into the water and it's really
and everyone's screaming and I'm sure everyone's making phone calls, everything.
So, and this rescue ferry's coming. And so I lent my phone to a few people for them to call their loved ones. And then I call my husband back. And this time I call him back and he's like, where are you? So I asked the guy next to me, I said, where are we? He said, we're in the Hudson River. So I tell my husband, Ron, I'm like, we're in the Hudson River. And he's like, you can't be. And we start to argue. And again, I'm like, I got to call you later. And I hung up on him because now the rescue boats were there.
So why was he insistent that you weren't in the Hudson? By this point, wasn't this everywhere?
It was, and that's a funny question. The TV feed was a little bit delayed from what I was telling him, and he really wasn't focusing. So when he saw it on TV, he saw the plane looking like it was going to sink. So when he was asking me where I was, I thought he meant geography. He really was trying to get me to say, was I on the plane, or was I off the plane? And he said, if you were on the plane, I thought this was going to be our last conversation. So I started to cry, and then I burst out laughing. He's like, Maryann, what's so funny? I said, honey, if you really thought this was our last conversation, why didn't you tell me you loved me? Like, why did you start arguing me about where am I? And so I just chalked that up to men and women really do communicate differently.
I love that. This really was a life-altering event for you. Talk to me about what this changed for you.
Prior to the crash, I was your typical executive. Worked 24/7, 7 days a week. I defined who I was by what I did. And I made a lot of sacrifices. And in hindsight, probably not the best sacrifices. I wasn't necessarily there for all the important events. And I used to tell people that I lived my life following what I refer to as the 2P principle, where you needed to have purpose and passion.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to believe in what you were doing and love doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was all I needed to succeed. It was all the motivation I needed. But I realized after sitting in the raft in the middle of the Hudson River that I was missing the most important P, which was perspective. So post the crash, I've tried to have a much more balanced life. I don't work full time anymore. I am involved with boards, I'm involved with charities, but most importantly, I spend more time with the people that I care about and share those life experiences that I didn't when I was working 24/7.
And hopefully most people don't have to endure what you have endured to get some perspective, right? Give us some tips on how to incorporate perspective into your daily life.
Yeah, it's hard,
Yep.
as you can imagine,
Yep.
incorporating perspective. Some people confuse perspective and plans.
Yep.
And to me, perspective's more than just vision, and it's more than having a plan, however well thought out it might be. One of my favorite sayings is, I plan and God laughs. Life never turns out the way you expect it to be. So perspective is putting it in perspective and is recognizing that not everything that you're going to experience is positive, and you just have to learn from those situations and you have to grow from those situations. And, one way to do that is to think of what I call the 10-10-10 rule. Is this going to matter in 10 seconds? Is this going to matter in 10 minutes? Is this going to matter in 10 years or 10 months or 10 years? And the further out on that continuum, hopefully that helps you put it in perspective. It's not important.
How do you recommend that we get through the tough times? As somebody who's been there, how do we do it?
Yeah, I would say there's 3 pieces of advice I would give to people. First and foremost, you can't let fear interfere with living. And being anxiety stricken, always being afraid to do stuff, that's not living life. That's not embracing life. So don't let fear interfere with living. Number 2, I like to say tough times don't last, tough people do. Bad things happen to good people, but eventually it'll dissipate, and you just have to learn from those experiences. And then the third thing I would say, and this was the hardest for me, was to be present and to live in the moment. And by that, I mean, you can really only tell the step that's in front of you. You don't know what's happening at the end of the road. So don't focus so much on the future and planning for that future. You got to enjoy life as you're living it.
So just one foot in front of the other.
Yes, exactly.